everyone. Welcome to the Backstage Classical Career Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Katrina Stroud, and I'm a classical violinist who started playing at the age of 3. I graduated from the Robert McDuffie Center for Strings at Mercer University with my bachelor's in violin performance, and I'm pursuing my master's in music at the University of Michigan. In this series, I invite esteemed classical musicians onto the show and interview them to tell their stories and give advice to share with others and preserve their legacies. Today, I'm interviewing my current violin teacher, Fabiola Kim. Not only is she an extremely talented violinist, she's also an incredible pedagogue. After 3 months of working together, she has greatly improved my violin technique and influenced the way I think in the practice room. Professor Kim enjoys a dynamic and versatile career as a soloist, chamber musician, recording artist, and pedagogue. Her recent album, 1939 with the Munich Symphony, has received international acclaim. Professor Kim made her concerto debut with the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra at the age of 7, just 3 years after beginning to play the violin. She is the winner of various awards and competitions, including being the youngest in history to win the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra's concerto competition. She has also won the Aston Music Festival Concerto Competition, the Juilliard Concerto Competition, the Come Ho Prodigy Music Award, and was a prize winner at the Klein International Competition for Strings, among others. She has collaborated with many renowned artists and has performed at summer festivals including the Aspen Music Festival, Ravinia Institute, Verbier Festival, and La Jolla Music Society Summerfest. Professor Kim was recently appointed Assistant Professor of Violin at the University of Michigan School of Music, Theater, and Dance, where this interview was recorded, and continues to serve as faculty at the Colburn School. Additionally, she is a co-founder and co-artistic director of the Sounding Point Academy alongside Robert Lipset. Other summer positions include violin faculty at Center Stage for Strings and Innsbruck Institute. Professor Kim received her artist diploma at the Colburn School under the guidance of Robert Lipset, where she also served as his teaching assistant, and she received her bachelor and master of music at the Juilliard School under the tutelage of Sylvia Rosenberg and Ronald Copes. Thank you so much for joining me on my podcast. Can you tell me a little bit about your musical background?
Sure. So I did grow up in a musical family. My parents are musicians. My dad's a pianist and my mom's a violinist, although she now has her second career.
I see.
That's completely not in music.
Okay.
And I'm very happy for her.
Mm-hmm.
But so I grew up listening to a lot of music. My mom especially taught a lot at home. We actually shared 2 teachers.
Okay.
Which is really interesting. I heard them practice, them rehearse all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it came somewhat naturally to me.
Mm-hmm.
Although I will say my parents tried everything they can to try to persuade me not to play music.
Oh, okay.
They said, I'll buy you more toys if you don't play violin. But I really wanted to play violin and not the piano, although my dad plays the piano.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, just the fact that the violin only has 4 strings, unlike piano has keys. And I just always was fascinated by how many different sounds, different kinds of sounds and colors that were coming out of the instrument. So I begged for a violin, and I think it wasn't even my parents. I think one of her students bought me a toy violin.
Oh, wow.
Because I would always be like, I want to play. So then eventually my mom gave in and bought me violin. And then still I just start with piano somehow. So they put me through piano for 6 months or something. I think learning music and just hearing sounds. And then I finally got to start the violin.
Okay, wow, amazing. That is a very funny story. So what was your time like at the Juilliard School and then at Colburn later?
So I grew up on the East Coast in New York, New Jersey, and did 2 years of pre-college. So I actually didn't do pre-college for that long, but I did 2 years of pre-college. So by the time I went to college, it felt like I knew the place, which I think helped me with just navigating things, because that place can be overwhelming, big city. You're kind of thrown into a pool of really, really talented colleagues and friends. So, but I do think that I cherish my time at both schools. They're very different. Juilliard, again, big city. I didn't realize what a privilege that was to be able to go over to the Lincoln Center and hear the New York Phil. I heard every single violinist come through.
Wow.
I go to the Met and, I saw so many operas there.
Mhm.
So in everything, and my teachers were amazing. Of course, my violin teacher, but my chamber coaches, even my, music theory, music history,
Yeah.
year training teachers. I still actually talk a lot about what I learned in those classroom settings too. And the friends that I made, I mean, they're still some of my best friends and
Yeah.
people that I actually work with now. Sometimes I go to a different festival and then I see my old friends, and it's really nice. Colburn School also, I mean, it's very different. It's much smaller.
Right.
I think you can barely have a full orchestra with
Oh,
just
okay.
students from Colburn. But, you know, my last school, and I actually learned a lot about myself there. And we can get into that more when I start talking about teaching, but that's really where I found my love for teaching and, just fixing things, because I was at that point where, I was playing and I was probably there, but when I studied with my teacher there, Mr. Lipset, in Aspen the summer before I went, decided to go to Colburn. He made me play to a level I had never been before. And I was all about that.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, I really feel like it was those extra few, percents that I really needed.
I see.
So he was really the reason why I went to Colburn, and then where I just went back to school in general. But I loved my time at both places.
Yeah. And speaking of Mr. Lipset, who were some of your other musical mentors and role models growing up?
So I feel very fortunate to say that I think most people have one or two major figures, role models in their lives. Maybe your college teacher, your master's teacher. I feel fortunate to have more. And it's really hard for me to pick one. I would have to pick like 4 and 5. And I think that's really unique. I don't think I've had a bad teacher. So, of course, Mr. Lipset, and now I run Sounding Point with him. So I've talked to him still daily, probably the closest teacher that I still talk to. And he, like I mentioned, he was the one who, really taught me how to perform. Not even just, how to be confident and perform, but just how to really polish your playing, how to really get to that performance level. He was really the person who taught me, how to play in a hall, how to prepare yourself. He would sit there with me during warm-ups, and then he taught me how I need to warm up to be really, really ready, which is a concept that I'd never even thought about. I thought you just warmed up and then you go on stage. But no, you have to really have your routine. So all the details that you think may not be as important really made all the difference. So he is, and I talked to him a lot about teaching. He's really a teacher, right? He's a true pedagogue, which I think is a little bit rare in just this time that we live in. And then, of course, there was Sylvia Rosenberg, and when I look at music, the way I read music is just really all her.
Wow.
And of course, I also studied with Ron Copes at the same time with Miss Rosenberg, although I studied with Miss Rosenberg longer, and my mother studied with for 6 years. She did her undergraduate and her master's with Miss Rosenberg. So yeah, we share her as a teacher. So both were, my time at Juilliard, really, really great. And then I studied with Kyunghwa Chung for 4 years, and I learned Bartok Concerto with her. I mean, I learned Franck Sonata with her. Those are some of the pieces that, when you hear the pieces in your head, I think of her sound. Because it's like she has such iconic recordings of them. And just, she was at a point where she wasn't performing. She had a finger injury. So she decided to teach, and she only had a few students, and we would just go and spend the day there.
Wow.
It was like the really old school, sort of old fashioned, you go and then you spend the day, we'd listen to recordings, we'd have a lesson and then take a break and then play more. So I learned so much. I heard so much about her performing career, and she's really one of the first Asian and first, women soloists out there. And so it was just so powerful to see that and hear her talk about some of the treatments that she was getting from different orchestras when she was just starting out, her relationship with Mr. Kalamian. So a lot of really intimate stories that, I really still think about a lot. And of course, all my teachers who set me up technically, although she was not my main teacher, my mom was a great violin teacher. She had many students, and so I worked a lot with her. Actually, the person that I have to talk about is CJ Chang, principal violist of Philadelphia Orchestra. He was he was really great friends with both my parents.
Okay.
So he was Uncle CJ until I was a teenager, and my parents decided, or my mom decided, I needed like a reset in my bow hold and my left hand. So suddenly he was my teacher.
Oh, wow.
And I only did martelé for like 3 to 6 months. Only that.
Wow.
Like no piece. And for a teenager to do that, and he was really tough.
Yeah.
But even now, if I have a question on how do I teach this technique, sometimes I will call him. And I always tell him that he needs to write a book or something. But he's just really responsible for how I'm set up.
Yeah.
So those are some of my role models.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so what have been some turning points in your career, would you say?
Ooh, turning points. Probably, I grew up with the mindset that I was going to do a lot of things. So it's hard to actually pinpoint because I never changed, what I want to do. So I always wanted to be a soloist and play a lot, but I wanted to do music. And I think this is really important for students to remember. I wanted to do music because I just really enjoy playing music.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't like I wanted to be famous. I wanted to be rich. I wanted to be, I wanted to play music and I really loved classical music. So I think even for me, I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be an artist. And I think that includes chamber music, solo.
Yeah.
And although I was never in a professional orchestra, I did guest concertmaster.
Okay.
With professional orchestras. So I did that for fun. It was really fun. I guess my biggest turning point, though, was really accepting this job and doing this a little bit more full-time. But even, I always was interested in teaching. So I think everything just kind of evolved really slowly.
Yeah.
Which I feel very fortunate about.
Yeah. And then can you talk a little bit about how that passion for teaching came about?
So, like I mentioned, I've always had really good teachers. So, again, I was always really close to my teachers. We talked a lot about learning, teaching. And when I went to college, it was really a way to make some extra money. I had some students, some, young students, some great ones, some, I would say I never actually taught a beginner, and that's a different skill set.
Yeah.
And I admire those who can really set little ones.
Yeah.
And I think they're so important that we need more of them.
Yeah.
But so I've always taught, and that's when I realized how much impact that I could have.
Yeah.
In a positive or a negative way. I remember a story. It was when I was in college. I won the concerto competition, but I played a concerto by a living composer, and I think I had it memorized, but it had a lot of notes by Christopher Rouse. So he was there for all the rehearsals. It was great. Anyway, I used the music, and my student was competing in a competition the following day or in a few days or something like that, and she was playing, I think, Broke Concerto or something like that. And I went to the competition, and there she was with the music stand. So I said, "What are you doing? You have it memorized." But she said, "Well, you played your concerto with music, so I decided I could do that too." So, a teacher can have a lot of influence on your student. So I've always liked teaching, and people had told me that I was, good at it. actually. But it was when I was at Colburn. Mr. Lipset called me in one day and he said, I have this young student who would like to study with me. I don't have the time to do everything I need to do because with younger students, and this is something that he taught me, sometimes they need more than once a week.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they need constant reminder, constant sort of input from you. He said, would you teach her with me? And I said, sure. And I didn't hesitate. I didn't ask for any details. And sometimes he'd actually have me come in and teach in front of him.
Oh.
Say, what are you doing now? I said, I'm just practicing. I said, can you come to my studio? And then the student would be there. And then he's like, work with her.
Wow.
And then you could just sit there. So, and I think he did that without saying anything for about a few months, close to a year, definitely at least one semester. And then he started having me come to more of his other students' lessons and then would say, what would you say now? And I think he was first just seeing how I would do. And then he asked me, after all of that, he said, would you be my assistant?
Wow.
So I said, of course, I'd be really honored. And that's when I really did talk a lot about teaching with him because he said, is this something that you would consider doing, more seriously? Because, I was performing a lot and he thought he definitely thought that I could just do that. But I was really happy to hear that he thought I would be a great teacher. He said, it takes more than just playing the violin well, right? So, and I'm finding out that more and more now too. But that's really sort of when I first said, oh, maybe this is something that I would like to do. Not only did my teacher think that about me, and I was just getting a lot of joy out of watching those students grow. And if, we're working on something really hard and then if it worked, it was fixed, I just felt it was so satisfying.
Yeah.
Right? And I just like working with people in general. And I do think that as an artist, as a musician, sometimes I was always feeling like I was doing this for me, but what is my sort of greater purpose?
Right. Yeah.
Of course you can do something and just for yourself and be totally happy, and that's fine. But I kind of wanted to I always thought music is really powerful. So of course I can perform and, play my music for people, but, it's also some people say it's an, dying art or,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's really important that I help continue that in a way.
For sure. Amazing. Yeah, I love that. And you're a co-founder of the Sounding Point Academy with Mr. Lipset. How did that project come about?
Oh, that's a really fun story, at least for me. So COVID happened and suddenly it was March of 2020, right? And everything closed down. And in the beginning, we thought, okay, by the summer, it'll be fine. And it wasn't. And everyone's there. And then I was talking to Mr. Lipset, everyone's just on their own. And he said, should we do something? And I said, yeah, let's do an online festival.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure he doesn't mind me sharing, but, we had to teach, a bunch of us had to teach Mr. Lipset how to even use Zoom. I don't think he had Wi-Fi at
Oh my goodness.
his home. So to go from that to trying to run a festival online, we didn't know what to expect. We decided to just do it. And the name, it was really hard to name something, right?
Yeah.
So we're just randomly saying things, and then we were just going through all musical terms.
Yeah.
And then we got to Sounding Point, and then it just somehow
Just clicked.
yeah, it just somehow felt right. So said, okay, we're going to call it Sounding Point Academy. And then, what is that website? Squarespace?
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually, we're talking about that before this. I am very bad with technology. So I asked my friend to make us a website.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we just opened, and then we just told, our students and got our colleagues involved because they were like, oh, yeah, that sounds great to
Mhm.
come together in some kind of a way possible.
Yeah.
And then we opened it up. And I'm sure we somehow advertised it because we had so many applicants.
Oh, really?
It was really powerful to see it all come in because I thought it was just going to be our students.
Hmm.
But I guess people were, really craving that community at the time. So we had, I don't know, 150, 60 students or something like that. We got all these great artists because they weren't performing.
Yeah, right.
So that's how it started. And after the first year, yeah, we didn't even have actually professional Zoom settings. So the first sort of class, people are coming in and it got to 100 people.
Mhm.
And I guess that was the max. So that
Yeah.
no one else could come in. So we're like, what do we do? So
Yeah,
we had
yeah.
to go purchase the whatever.
Yeah.
And then, it was before schools started using Zoom.
Mhm.
So, and then after that, it really was a success and people really liked it. And we were getting a lot of questions. Are you going to do it again? So then we said, should we try to do it in person? So that's how it started and it's still going.
Yeah. Wow. And it's an amazing festival. I've been and I definitely
Thank you.
recommend. Yes. It
Thank
was
you.
really, really impactful for me those 3 weeks.
Oh, great.
So speaking about your passion for teaching, and we're here filming at the University of Michigan, how did you come about this job?
Yeah. So I guess timing is everything. I was at Colburn. I had finished my studies and I had my own studio in the pre-college division. And I was still working as Mr. Lipset's assistant. And this job opened up and I just really admired all the teachers here. Not just violin teachers, but, all the string teachers. And I had worked with some of them before and I had come here to Center Stage Strings.
Oh, good. Yeah.
By the time I applied, I had just finished my first summer here at Center Stage Strings, so I started teaching before I got my job
I see.
at Center Stage Strings. And I really loved Ann Arbor, and I knew I was young. I was a young teacher, and I had no prior college experience,
Hmm.
but I figured, why not? And it worked out. So, and
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying being.
Amazing, yeah. And so you've also you've performed around the world, really. What have you learned from these performances with the symphony orchestras, and do you have any stories to share?
Yeah, so what I've learned when I was younger and performing, I cared a lot about what people would think and
Mm.
say. And it's true, every orchestra has a different vibe.
I see.
Some are really welcoming and really nice. Some are a little bit like, okay, let me see what you can do.
Yeah, right.
Um, and and same thing with conductors. Of course, you want the conductor to like you. So you're sort of trying to see, okay, does he like this?
Yeah.
Or does she like this? Or, is
Mhm.
this too much? How can I play? Oh, I'm playing in Europe,
Mhm.
and I'm playing Mozart in Europe. Like, uh-oh, what if I sound too American?
Oh, I
Or,
see.
there was a lot of that. And then, you know, the more and more I played and the kind of the older I got, I realized that as long as you're convinced in a way that you play,
Mm.
they'll accept it.
Yeah.
Right? And even if they don't, sometimes they don't, because sometimes they really don't like how a soloist plays.
Right.
And that's okay because you like it.
Yeah.
So I now care a lot less, I guess, about what each orchestra will think.
Mhm.
And I care a lot more about what I think.
Yeah.
So I think that's also just, that comes from just having done it enough now and from experience. But I love doing that because when you learn a concerto and it really feels complete when you can play with orchestra. You
Mhm.
get all the parts, you get the right kind of texture, you get the right harmonies. Um, of course, they're great pianists who can play the orchestra parts,
Yeah.
but it's different than a bassoon and then
Mhm.
a trumpet
Right.
and then the whole, percussion section and
Mhm.
so yeah, stories. Well, some. I guess it's more of advice. Always know that you and the orchestra agree on which editions you play on.
Oh,
I had this one story where I was playing, and it was a New Year's concert in Berlin, and they had asked me to play a bunch of showpieces. So it was Ravel Sagan, Wieniawski, D major Polonaise, I think Chrysler Liebeslied with orchestra, and then Tchaikovsky Waltz Scherzo, which I didn't even realize the edition that we all play. I actually did know that it was a shortened version, but I thought that's what everyone played.
yeah. I see.
But that doesn't have an orchestra arrangement. So he showed up to the first rehearsal, and the orchestra is playing something that I had never heard before. And there's no way to find an arrangement. So we tried our best to actually just cut, okay, you're going to play up to this measure and then jump here. But that was difficult.
Yeah.
So not as bad as, playing a different concerto, but that was pretty kind of nerve-wracking there.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Some of my favorite times that I played with orchestra are not necessarily with the best orchestras that I've played. I've played with some really, really excellent orchestras, but some of the favorite ones are, like my first time playing a concerto. And actually, just when I played with school orchestras. I played when I was a student, of course, I played at Juilliard with the Juilliard Orchestra as a student at Colburn with my friends from the Colburn Orchestra. And even last year here, although I'm not a student, with my students and USO, there's something so special about playing a concerto with an orchestra where everyone.
I see. Yeah.
And they're there, they want to play well for you.
Right. Yeah.
They want to play, and you're all friends, so you really feel like you're having conversations. So those are some of my most special times with orchestras.
Amazing. Yeah, that's very inspiring. So how have you developed your teaching methods, and how do you approach the different personalities and playing styles of students?
So I'm sure my teaching method is still evolving, and it will until I stop teaching, right? But I do think that each student is individual. And I think that's really, really important to think about that. So even assigning repertoire to, how long someone stays on a piece, if it's two students might play a piece at a similar level, I'll move on with one student and then come back to it 6 months later. Or with this one student, it's really good, but I'll still stay on it. Yeah, because I just know how they work to get it to that one other level. My hope is that when a student leaves me, they can work like I work.
I see.
It's not, I can sit through, and it's unfair to say this because I do a lot of detail. I really do a lot of detail work with students. But at the same time, I want to teach them the tools. And I think that's the most important thing. That's why, I do a lot of technique class, of course, but just even in individual lessons. If someone's playing, I don't know, Paganini Concerto, right? Let's say there are a lot of thirds. I would just work on a lot of thirds with them rather than just figuring out how those thirds in that piece works.
Yeah.
Someone's playing their fingered octaves. No, you have to learn how to actually play fingered octaves first.
Yeah.
So a lot of emphasis is on that, when they learn a new piece, that they can approach it like they have a teacher.
Yeah.
Rather than, they actually need to always play for someone.
I see.
Yeah, and then I want them to be well-informed, intelligent players. Playing the violin is great, but it's a tool to play music, right? I always say I love music, and violin is my voice. Yeah. Sometimes violin is not even my favorite instrument, but I think it is my voice that I sort of like identify as, right? So I want my students to listen to a lot of music, really be curious about music and different forms of music, different genres. If you're playing Beethoven concerto, listen to all the quartets. So my hope is that I can guide them to have a much broader kind of sense of music rather than, just, okay, I just got to drill my Sibelius violin concerto.
Yeah, I see. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And so in this industry, I feel like it's pretty common to feel burnout. So if you experience burnout, how do you overcome that? And how do you help your students overcome that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's hard, right? Um, and I want to say this, if you really need to, taking a break, it's not so bad,
Yeah.
right? I actually did that during COVID. And it was an interesting time because everyone is anxious about it, of course, anxious about, you know, their living situation, what the future holds, things were getting canceled. Yeah, I was supposed to play all these new concertos that I never learned, including Klosnov, which I've never, but all of that got canceled. Um, and but that was a time I also just said, you know what, I'm just gonna take a little break from violin. So I didn't really play for for a little while. I do think that having something else that you're either passionate about, or devote yourself to, that's actually that during COVID is when I learned to play golf, and it's still a hobby of mine. I'm still terrible, but I developed a hobby that was new for me. So sometimes I think that helps to have a different hobby or different field that you're interested in, and a lot of musicians with a really healthy mindset, I think, have that outlet that you can still somewhat separate yourself from this thing that we're so obsessed with, right?
Yeah.
If you feel like you're experiencing burnout with repertoire or something, you're not really improving, I think, well, this sounds like, I'm lecturing to practice technique. But really, if you can get through pieces quicker, I feel like you experience that less, at least for me, when I feel like I'm getting somewhere. So that's why I focus a lot on just my playing rather than just like repertoire driven so much. And that helps me kind of move through things quicker. The other thing is what we do is so, so, so subtle. Everything's so subtle. Like from when I'm telling someone, like, yeah, that's not that great. Did you hear that? That was so good. It's like to a normal person,
Right.
they can't even tell the difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I always tell my students, or even myself, I get very frustrated sometimes when I'm practicing. Like if you could just see me practice, I actually do this less and less. But sometimes I get so frustrated and so impatient, I start just crying. I'm just crying in my practice. I can't do this every day. It's the same.
Right. Yeah.
But finding small victories is really helpful for me.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, maybe it's still out of tune, but it was really out of tune yesterday, and it's like pretty close today.
Yeah.
I retained it a little bit. Or like, I can't think about it. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, that's always sharp. Why did I think about it before? And today I thought about it before and I could control it a little bit better. That's a small victory.
Yeah.
Right. So, especially when you're fixing something big or, you're so frustrated with your bow hold, you can't fix your bow hold. And then suddenly, today you felt like it was a little bit less tense, and being flexible with yourself, that we don't always improve in a linear way.
Right.
Sometimes it's going like this and then this will happen. And knowing that that's normal.
Yeah.
So I just have to tell myself this is normal. And now that as I get older, I have a different problem too. Sometimes I feel like my coordination's not there. It's probably because I haven't practiced it, but I'm thinking, is it because I'm getting older now? Like, am I past my prime? So that's a new kind of worry, right? That could just drive me crazy. So, but just knowing that all of this is normal.
Right.
It's all just finding ways to get back on track, finding ways to get out of this. And then in the end, we were so lucky. Just knowing that, I think we're so lucky to be able to devote this much time, energy, and just everything you've got into something that's like it's a box, right?
Right.
Think about this. We're not killing anyone with it. We're not, we're not really saving anyone either, except music really can save people. So what we can do can only really be positive,
Right.
I think. Like, can you imagine being a surgeon? Can you imagine being a soldier? Can you imagine being a politician?
Yeah.
But what we do really only has positive
Right.
effect on other people, and I think that's great. So whenever I feel like I'm gonna be burned out or whatever, I think about that, and I said, by what I'm doing, making someone's life better, and even if I feel like I'm not finding motivation, find that little thing that's exciting to me. Like that one note was a little bit more into. So like little things. I find little things because I think when we're little, young, and going from like Suzuki Book 1 to, next year in Suzuki Book 5 or something, the improvements are huge, right? And they get smaller and smaller, and then we get more and more tired, right?
Yeah.
But just knowing that this is really all for us, and we're lucky to be in this business where everything that we do, yes, is for others, also really for us. And, I think having that kind of pride helps me.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. And I love that mindset of, like we're only creating like beautiful things and like only like having positive effect on people. So that's great.
My teacher would say, Miss Rosenberg would always say, aren't we so lucky that the world is, I mean, she's quite a character. She said, there's so many bad things happening in the world. It's like, aren't we so lucky? All we worry about is that note was out of tune.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Yes. That's a very good shift of the mindset. So your career started when you were so young. I mean, you had your debut with an orchestra when you were 7, which is amazing. How do you find drive and inspiration for? Maybe there's a little bit of overlap.
Yeah, definitely there's an overlap. But like I said, you have to do everything with a lot of love. And I'm the last person, you know me, to like talk about love. I'm like very realistic and but yeah, I find I don't know, I find the drive because I love what I do and I want to be really good at it.
Right.
I like excellence.
Yes.
Right? And so every day I get up and I'm still excited about things. That also doesn't help with stress because with excitement and just drive comes stress.
Right.
And I think any sort of high functioning person probably has a lot of stress.
Yeah.
So for me, it's actually dealing with the stress. And actually, some people will say, oh, how are you always so calm? How are you always so, not stressed? Like this year I'm actually just a little bit less busy. Sometimes it happens. Last school year, I played 12 different concertos.
Wow.
And for someone who has a full-time teaching job, and it's a lot. And, like 1 month I was playing Brahms concerto, Wagner concerto, and then playing Sibelius, and then, a lot of Tchaikovsky. Yeah, so dealing with stress is a big thing for me. But as long as I can deal with that and, kind of maintain, like having different outlets, right? Just time management, right? That really helps me with stress if I just plan out every day. So that's why sometimes you might see I have like a 10-minute break. And I'm like, okay, 8 minutes out of this 10-minute, I'm going to practice one passage. Sometimes a student will come in a little bit early. I'm like, nope, no, I'm sorry. I need I need those 2 minutes. Give me those 2 minutes, right? But finding the drive itself is not the hardest part for me. I just really strive for that. It's just, again, having pride in what I do. I could be playing at a nursing home. I think I still put the same kind of stress as if I were playing in Carnegie Hall.
Wow.
Just because, yes, no one else knows, but you were going to think about it. Right? So finding that drive for me is not external. It really is internal. It's like having the pride that this is what I do and I want to do it really well. And it's all about making myself proud, right? It's all internal rather than like, oh, if I do this, if I have this concert, I'm going to be really motivated to practice. If I have an external motivation does help. And I talk about that with my students. Like if you have if you are struggling with motivation, have external motivation, deadlines. Deadlines are great.
Yeah.
Like by next lesson, I am going to memorize those 5 pages. By the end of the month, I'm going to play in studio class with piano. And some people, it's everything internal. And for me, it was more that. I don't ever want to not sound good. And that is enough for me to get going.
Yeah.
But definitely having both external and internal pressure or deadlines, I think that helps.
Yeah, very important for sure. So I always like to close with this one question. What advice do you want to give to aspiring professional musicians?
Oh, I can talk to them for a long time. But advice that I would give them is to... that's hard. It's everything I think talked about already. But to really be true to themselves. Because oftentimes I see aspiring musicians get either sort of deflated or, because they thought they were going to do something and then they felt like they weren't good enough to do it anymore. I think be extremely realistic. This is a really hard profession for sure. So if you're thinking that you're going to graduate from college and then get a job, but with your fill or whatever, maybe that will happen to you, but it may not happen to you.
Right.
But it is, first of all, it is a really, really long race. Right? It's really not a sprint. I guess you could say that about anything that you do, but it really is not a sprint. If someone had told me that this is where I was going to be, like at the school with my students, have a cat, 10 years ago, I would have been like, wow, really? Be open-minded to opportunities. I got a lot of opportunities for saying yes to things. Even if things at the time, if someone, said, do you want to do this? And I'd never done this. Okay, yes, I'll try. Saying yes to things, you might realize that you're really great at something that you had never done, but unless you say yes, you don't know, right? Be very efficient, manage your time well, have that time to yourself to practice because, yeah, you always need to just be improving, right? Be nice to everyone. That's the easiest one to do, really.
Yeah.
That is so easy to do. Just be nice. Just show up to be there for others. And because, this is like competitive field, but the more you help out your colleague, the better this field will be, right? You want to create opportunities for yourself, but for others too. And that way, you actually, those same people will help you too. So be nice and supportive to your colleagues. Yeah, be efficient, say yes to things, be open-minded, and just really love what you do. If you don't have the love for this, this is really hard.
Yeah.
Right? But at the same time, it can be really, really rewarding.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm even sitting in studio class. I was actually giving a master class to this one person recently, last weekend, and she played well. It was Brahms concerto, but she was having some problems with different things, right? At first, she thought, she was like, oh yeah, I'm playing Brahms concerto. Like, I'm not good enough to play Brahms concerto. And then she was, bothered by every little note. And yeah, of course, there's a time and place for that in your practice room. But I said, aren't you just so happy you're playing it? Like, this is such great music. And the fact that you can actually play it and someone's asking you to play it and there are people listening to you play it.
Mhm.
Like, wow, like that's so special.
Yeah.
So try to have that kind of love for what you do, even though at times, I am the same way. Sometimes I'm like, why do I even do this? Like, what do I get out of this? This is so frustrating. I can just be a listener.
Mhm.
But for me, no, I can't just be a listener. I love playing it. I love like being there. And for my students, I kind of live through their performances too.
Mhm.
And I love working on this, like solving problems and all of that, just like the artistry of the violin playing and the music. So I think that's my biggest advice, is to have that kind of care and love for it. And then that will carry you through difficult moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, thank you so much. This
Of
was a great
course.
interview.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, of course. Thank you to Fabiola Kim for another meaningful interview. I love interviewing everyone who comes on my podcast, but it's especially rewarding for me to interview my teachers and hear their journeys through music. I loved how she said to celebrate the small victories and reminded us that it's a great privilege to be a musician. Thank you so much for joining me on Backstage Classical Career Conversations. If you would like to support this podcast, please leave us a rating and review on the platform you're listening to this on. You can follow us on Instagram at Backstage Classical Podcast, and be sure to tell your friends and family to share these career stories from some of the top musicians in this country. I'm Katrina Stroud, and it was great to see you here. Until next time, stay inspired and listen to the stories of others.